The show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is one of my favorite sitcoms. It had a catchy theme song, just about everyone knows it, word for word, memorable characters, solid casting to play the characters, great parents, Aunt Viv, Uncle Phil, and my first crush, Ashley Banks. And of course, it was the beginning of Will Smith's acting career. And now, he's one of the biggest names in Hollywood. If it wasn't for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I don't know what Monday nights in America would be like. I don't know. I guess we'd have to resort to watching Murder, She Wrote or Designing Women, or I don't know. I don't know what else was on Monday nights. I wasn't watching it, I was watching Fresh Prince. The show ran for 6 seasons, from 1990 to 1996. Throughout that 6 seasons, Will Smith has dated an array of beautiful women. And most of those women have gone on to be A-list celebrities themselves. Some of them models, Miss America even, and even a Miss USA. So what we're going to do today is review every single woman, season by season, episode by episode. The many loves of Will Smith. The many loves of Will. The first apple of Will's eye when he came to Bel-Air was Mimi Mumford, played by Victoria Rowell. Will wanted to impress Mimi, as well as her father, Dr. Mumford, played by Richard Roundtree, aka Shaft. Dr. Mumford was a hard ass of a father, so to impress Dr. Mumford and Mimi, Will created another identity, Kip Smithers, a high-crust, high-class prep. Only to realize that Mimi likes bad boys. So Will throws an audible and tells him, "Hey, you got it all wrong. I'm not Kip Smithers from Prep. I'm Kip, which stands for Conceived in Prison." Yeah, conceived with a K, that's hardcore. He doesn't ride for crew, he writes for the 2 Live crew, and they let him go because his lyrics were too abrasive. He didn't go to Penn State, he went to the state pen. Eventually Will gets caught up in his lie and he ends up empty-handed. We never see Mimi Mumford again, but Richard Roundtree would later resurface in season 6 as Dr. Gordon Sims. The next love of Will was Christina Johnson, played by A.J. Johnson, in the episode Deaf Poet Society. Will attends an after-school poetry club and makes a poem up on the spot. It impresses the ladies, and Christina in particular. She wants more. Will brings her back to Chateau La Bel Air and tells her about the urban legend of a poet named Raphael de la Ghetto. Christina, who's wet for words, whose pleasure is poetry, gives Will a wet one on the living room couch, and she tells him, if you can bring in Raphael de la Ghetto to perform one of his poems, there's more where that came from. But the problem, Raphael de la Ghetto doesn't exist. He's not real. So what does Will do? He gets Jeffrey, the butler, to act as Raphael de la Ghetto. Jeffrey comes out in an afro wig and dashiki, but people quickly see through it. Cannons to the left, cannons to the right now. We know that's his butler. No Christina for Will. But all is not lost. Jazz comes in with the interception and tells Christina that he's actually Raphael de la Ghetto and gives her a sample of one of his poems. My love for you is like a river, like a summer breeze that makes my soul shiver. One look from you is more precious than gold. Let's go get some barbecue and get busy. Instant panty dropper, and Jazz gets the A.J. Johnson 1990 Nana. In October that year, the Banks family hold a Halloween party. Will and Carlton do some mad scramble mall macking, and Will meets Cindy, played by Tyler Collins, at the food court. Cindy gets an open invite to the party, and she serves Will a peanut butter croissant with a side of love. Cindy enters the party Cinderella style and shuts the whole shit down.
No one recognizes her without her glasses and hairnet. They have a good time at the party, and when Cindy leaves, she forgets her slipper. She comes back and gets her slipper and gives Will them digits. But Will never calls because he's Will Smith and he's like, on to the next. So for Jeffrey's birthday, Will sets him up on a blind date with a British nanny. That British nanny is Helen, played by Naomi Campbell. When Will sees this, he feels Jeffrey's out of his league. They go to a dance club, and while Jeffrey's doing his two-step with his birthday date, Will strong arms his way on the dance floor, and it immediately goes from tea and crumpets to tea and hump it, from Hitchcock to Hancock. And Will destroys Jeffrey's birthday date, but all is forgiven. By the end of the episode, Jeffrey feels that Helen is a better fit for Will, and he actually gives him her number. You're a real one for that, Jeffrey. For the next love of Will, we're introduced to Jazz's sister, Janet, played by Vivica Fox. No one could believe someone as gorgeous as Janet could be related to Jazz. But hey, it's a numbers game sometime. They go on their date and they're feeling each other, until Janet reveals that she's a real-life succubus. A real Ike Turner of a woman. Will instantly realizes this woman is crazy, and he aborts mission expeditiously. Will and Jazz find another sucker to pawn her off on in the form of Carlton, and they go on another date. But this time, as Janet's spewing her dragon fire across the dinner table, Carlton puts a stop to it. He lets her know, like, hey, this is unacceptable. This shit will not fly. Who raised you? Woman, I'm putting my foot down. And surprisingly, it turns her on. Janet falls in love with Carlton. And this is probably one of the few episodes where Carlton had more sauce than Will. The last love of Will for season 1 is scholarship student Kayla Samuels, played by Jasmine Guy, in the episode Love at First Sight. Will tries to holler at Kayla and she brushes him off like, nigga please, with that little boy game. I go to college. You know, Hillman. I'm only here for one episode anyway. Will's ego is bruised and it leads to a Yo Mama match with Kayla, which later leads to a lip-locking match. And now they go together. But Aunt Vivian sees how Kayla dating Will is affecting her grades, because now she's getting the D on her test. Will, not wanting to be a burden on Kayla's future, has to let her go so she can tend to her studies. By the time season 2 premieres, Will has his first Bel Air girlfriend, Kathleen, played by Tisha Campbell Martin. They're knowingly head over heels for each other, and Aunt Viv thinks that they're moving too fast. They need to slow it down. Later, Will would be locked in a basement with Kathleen while experiencing his first earthquake. And it's then that they realize they didn't know each other as well as they thought. They start to get frustrated and lose patience with each other, having petty arguments. And at one point, Kathleen pulls out her contacts, her eyelashes, her nails, and her wig. Damn, Gina. And Will is turned all the way the fuck off. After the dust settles and the smoke clears, they call a mutual split, realizing that they're not compatible for each other. But by the time the school dance comes around, Will already has a date locked in the form of Cindy Norris, played by Lela Rochon. Cindy's only seen for one scene when they're discussing the night of the date. Will, who at first was going to cancel the date, changes his mind once Cindy starts talking about what she'll be wearing that night. But Will's broke and he can't afford the tux, so instead of asking his rich family, he picks up a part-time job at a pirate-themed restaurant. The Banks family attend the restaurant and Will serves their table. After serving Uncle Phil with rounds of sneak disses, Uncle Phil finally realizes, oh, this is my nephew serving us. I couldn't have recognized him behind the eye patch and the faux pirate accent. And Uncle Phil's like, dude, what are you doing working? We're rich. We're lit. You see my house. You want a tux money? You know I'm good for it. I'm not even tripping. We still don't even know if Will went on that date with Cindy Norris or how her dress looked. The final love interest of Will in season 2 is a 2-for-1 in episode She Ain't Heavy. Will goes on a blind date with Dee Dee, played by Queen Latifah, who played Hillary's boss in the season 1 finale Working It Out. She has a bubbling personality and a sense of humor that matches Will's. They connect on a mental, spiritual level. But because she's not a size 6 model, Will isn't as quick to claim her as his girlfriend. And after hearing Will's friends fat shame her, Dee Dee storms off like, fuck you and your friends, Will. I'm Queen Latifah. I'll find another light-skinned guy to go out on a date with me. So instead of taking Dee Dee out, Will takes Claudia Prescott out, played by Nia Long,
who would later appear in season 5
as Will's fiancée, Lisa. But Claudia is an airhead. She just doesn't get Will's sense of humor. She just doesn't get it. Dee Dee's date is void of personality himself, and her date's going stale. But lo and behold, Will and Dee Dee stick straws up their noses. They turn around, and boom, we're friends again. This was the last time we see Dee Dee. Will's first girlfriend of season 3 is Lindsay, played by Michelle Brianna White. And Lindsay is no Naomi Campbell or Vivica Fox. She's rather plain Jane and nerdy looking. Will's not really into her, but Lindsay keeps lacing him with gifts. Laker tickets, leather jacket, and a motorcycle to match. Eventually, Will calls it off and lets her know that, hey, I'm not really feeling you like that. And she says the same. She claims that she was only dating Will because he was the star of the basketball team. She just wanted to ride the wave. Now, this is the season where Aunt Vivian is pregnant. And in one episode, Will steps in for Uncle Phil to go with her to Lamaze class. This is where he meets Danny Mitchell, played by none other than Vanessa Williams,
former Miss America.
Since Danny came by herself, Will steps in to become her partner, as well as Aunt Vivian's. Danny invites Will to go to the next Lakers game with him, and they ride to the Forum in style. They head to see the Lakers in a limo, but on the way to the Forum, Danny goes into labor. She has the baby right there in the limo, and Will has second thoughts about his prego fetish. Love interest 3 of season 3 is Monique, played by Kim Fields. Will has the whole house to himself, and it's just him and Monique in the living room. Will activates the clapper, which not only just turns the lights on and off, but plays mint condition when you use it. They're on the couch, and Will's on first base. He's moving to second base. He's on third base, and just when he's rounding the corner, there's a screeching halt. Monique saving herself for marriage. She's old-fashioned. So what does Will do? Takes one of his uncle's cars, talks his friend Jazz into acting as a reverend, and they have a fake shotgun wedding. Now that they're fake married, Monique gives Will the golden ticket to her magical garden. Will gets a guilty conscience and comes clean with Monique. He tells her that they really didn't get married, and he only wanted to marry her so he can get them draws. Monique knocks him smooth the fuck out. No Tootie Tang for Will, but he wakes up in time to have a date for that year's prom, and his date is Cindy. We have another Cindy, played by Mary Marrow. Between all of his schoolwork and being a star athlete, it was starting to take a toll on Will, because by the day of the prom, he's sapped, he's drained, he's motherfucking tired. Doesn't even hit the dance floor once. Cindy, frustrated, wants to dance. She just walks off on Will and leaves him at the prom. And that was it for season 3. We're going to revisit this and I'll review the rest of the series. We're also going to go across the lines with Ringo Starr and U-God of the Wu-Tang Clan. We'll be back after these messages. The Many Loves of Will.
In the season 4 premiere, we're introduced to Aunt Viv Dose, played by Daphne Maxwell Reid. Not my Aunt Viv. We're also introduced to the latest of Will's women, Jackie Ames, played by Tyra Banks. Jackie attends the same university as Will and Carlton, ULA, on a basketball scholarship, and she also works at the campus bookstore, the Peacock Stop. Jackie has a bit of a history with Will as they grew up together in West Philly. They hadn't seen each other in 3 years, so when they recognize each other on campus, they dart across the room for a warm embrace, to Carlton's dismay. Only for Jackie to slap Will shortly thereafter, claiming that he never called her after he left. Just threw her to the side, forgot about her. Will defends himself by saying, hey, I didn't call you because I missed you so much. Plus, it was a weird time in my life. I had a lot going on. You know, a couple guys, they were up to no good, started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in a fight, my mom got scared, and then, it was just a weird time. Crazy stuff. My mom wanted me to get out of town, and I just, my name wasn't good in the hood anymore. I'm sorry. She would eventually forgive him and also brush off his advances throughout her tenure in Bel Air, and nothing came out of it more than a homeboy-homegirl relationship. We'd only see Jackie for 8 episodes. Our next Bel Air beauty is Retta, played by Rachel True. Will and Retta go on a double date to the opera with Hillary and Will's professor. Because instead of studying for a class you're failing in, why not just pimp your cousin out to your heartbroken teacher? Come on, Will, we're better than that. But Hillary spoils the fun for Will. She couldn't get past the professor's prominent mole and his bulging Adam's apple. They were instant turnoffs. And once she realizes she's being used as a pawn, Hillary kind of tells Will about himself. Like, what the fuck, cuz? My husband just died on live television. And now you're trying to pitch me off to your mole man of a teacher? This is one of the few episodes where Hillary is the voice of reason. Believe it or not. Retta must have caught wind of Will's schemes and got turned off too, because we never see Retta again. Later in the season, music sensation Michelle Michaels, played by Stacey Dash, visits campus. All of the students are starstruck. They're lining up to meet her. They can't believe it's the real Michelle Michaels. They're telling her how great she is, how great her music is. Everyone except for Will. Michelle Michaels asked what's his opinion of her last album. He told her that shit was trash. And Michelle Michaels not only likes that shit, but she loves that shit. To the point where she tracks him down at their bank's residence and invites him out for a date. The family plans a surprise party for Will, whose birthday's coming up. But Will doesn't even attend his own surprise party. He's unavailable. They're paging him, they're calling his Zach Morris phone, and he doesn't answer. He's too busy being in a limo with Michelle freaking Michaels and Whoopi Goldberg and Ray Charles, Jack Nicholson impersonators, popping bubbly in the limo. So they attend a boxing match for their date, and it's there when Will gets a rude awakening. He sees some random guy just tonguing down his date, just PDA, at a boxing match. And Will steps up to the guy and tells him, "Hey man, you can't do that to my date. You see this ring I'm wearing? She bought me that." And the guy responds, "Yeah man, she bought me that same ring," and shows it to Will. Will proceeds to whip his ass. Apparently Michelle Michaels dates a lot of men and buys them rings. She had to let Will know that, "Hey kid, I'm only here for a good time, not a long time." On Valentine's Day of '94, we see Will and his girlfriend Samantha, played by Amy Hunter, go on a double date with Ashley Banks, coming of age now, with her boyfriend Brian. They go on a cute little putt-putt date, but Will is being a killjoy the whole time and ruins the fun by being an overprotective big cousin. He just couldn't stand Brian acting all mannish with his baby cousin. Throughout the whole date, most of Will's focus is on babysitting Ashley. Samantha feels neglected. Will's not paying her any mind. And she tells him that this is a double standard because Brian is just acting like a younger version of you. He's talking to Ashley just like how you talk to me. You're a hypocrite, Will. And then she just walks off. Will doesn't even stop her because he can't even remember her name. It's Samantha, Will. Samantha. Our next Bel Air beauty is Lisa Adams, played by Cree Summer. And the only thing in the way of Lisa dating Will is her overprotective father, Augustus Adams, played by John Witherspoon. Bang bang. Somehow, Will agrees to go on a helicopter ride with Augustus. He would later regret it, because while they're in the helicopter, up in the air, Augustus was starting to get weird. Mad weird. And then the helicopter crashes. Will lands just safe enough to where he's not harmed in any way. And then he just leaves Augustus to tend for himself. I don't know. I really like Cree Summer. I really like John Witherspoon. But this episode was random as fuck. Later in the season, Uncle Phil is visited by an old flame, Janice Robertson, played by the one and only Pam Grier. And Janice brings her daughter along with her, Wendy, played by Elise Neal. Aunt Viv II is not feeling this from the jump. Who is this heifer? Why is she in my house? I don't like her. I feel insecure. Phil, you're gonna sleep on the couch now. So Uncle Phil reminisces with Janice over the good old days. And they kind of touch on some things that resurface that you might not want to discuss in front of your wife and kids. Meanwhile, Will hits it off with Wendy. They continue the conversation as Will walks her back to the room they're staying at. But before they depart, they kiss in the hallway, and Will's in the game, baby. Wendy goes back into her room, and as Will leaves, he runs into Janice. They strike up a conversation, and Janice invites him into her room. The conversation is on the surface until Will pulls out the photo album and he sees pictures of Janice naked. Now that he's seen Foxy Brown in all her glory, Will feels like he's got to leave, man. This is an old freak. This won't end well. But Janice is like, nah, you ain't going anywhere. Will doesn't get back home until the following morning. And he sees Uncle Phil. Uncle Phil says, hey, Janice, man, she's a lot of fun, right? And Will just kind of like, man, I gotta just let the cat, I guess, and the cougar out of the bag now. I smashed the homie. Uncle Phil blurts it out for the whole family to hear. And that's when things get messy. Any chance with Wendy is now thrown out the window. And we never see Wendy or her zebra striped pants again. And the final love of Will in season 4 is Dana, played by former Miss USA Kenya Moore. Will and Dana start the episode off by making out in the outhouse, making it a makeout house, until Jazz and his wife Jewel crash the party and kill the vibe. Dana leaves because the mood is ruined, and also she's really hungry. In season 5, Will and Carlton go on yet another date. Will's date is Valerie Johnson, played by Tim B. Locke, and Carlton's date is Karen, played by Jonelle Kennedy. Carlton decides to get the party started with the movie and throws in Old Yeller. Will isn't having it. Old Yeller? I'm trying to bust down a whole heifer. Scram, Carlton, go outside and tend to your date, smoking a cigarette. Valerie says Carlton should stay. He's enjoying the movie, I'm enjoying the movie, we're here to watch the movie. Will, who's had enough of this corny shit, steps out himself for a breather, only to come back and see his cousin making out with his date. Will starts hating because Carlton got chose, and this eventually leads to a fight, where Carlton knocks out Will with his elbows because his hands were glued to his head. But it was all for naught, because we never see Valerie Johnson again. Nia Long reappears in her more popular role, Lisa Wilkes, in the episode Will's Misery. Lisa is a fellow student at ULA who's pledging to cross over into one of the more popular sororities at the university. But in order to join a sorority, Lisa must come up with an elaborate scheme which involves luring Will to a cabin, where Will thinks there will be some sexual healing, but Lisa turns the tables on him, has him hog-tied and hanging from the ceiling. Will eventually frees himself from the ropes, and when Lisa returns to the cabin, she apologizes to Will, telling him that this was all just a prank so she can get in her stank sorority. She also lets him know that Carlton was in on the joke. So Will goes along with the joke, and when he gets back home, he has Carlton think that he might have killed Lisa, leaving a lot of gray area, a lot left to the imagination, which leads to one of the greatest outtakes in sitcom history. Lisa Wilkes would become a recurring character on the show, as we see Will Smith become serious for the first time and only time in the series. Will would profess his love for Lisa in a fat suit at the grocery store. He would profess his love for Lisa on the Jay Leno show. Her father, Fred Wilkes, played by John Amos, the GOAT of TV dads, has even taken a liking to him. They would eventually get engaged and even elope, only to change their minds. But on the day of the actual wedding, Lisa gets cold feet and stands Will up at the altar. But the moment isn't completely wasted, because even though Will and Lisa didn't get married, Lisa's father, Fred, and Will's mother, Vi, played by Vernee Watson, they get married instead. Because prior to that, they caught their parents getting it in the guest room. Ouch. Sorry, Will. You traded in your Chictionary for this woman. Back to the drawing board. While engaged to Lisa, Will meets another fellow student named Denise, played by Robin Givens, former Mrs. Tyson. Denise knows that Will is engaged, but she doesn't care. She looks at it as a challenge. She even sets him up with corny riddles like miss me, only for Will to say kiss me, so she can pounce on him. But before Denise wraps Will up in her Robin Givens web, Will puts a halt to that shit and lets her know that I'm a one-woman man now. I'm serious. And if he could do it all over again, knowing Will, he'd probably risk it all for Denise, knowing that he'd eventually get stranded at the altar. But oh well. In the final season, season 6, Will and Carlton go on another double date. This time, Will's date is Sandra, played by Garcelle Beauvais, who also appeared in season 3, episode 3, That's No Lady, That's My Cousin, where she played Veronica. And Carlton's date is Tiffany, played by Tamala Jones. They go back to the girl's apartment and they're having a good time until they realize that Sandra has a boyfriend, a big boyfriend. The big boyfriend comes home, interrupts the date, and scares the piss and shit out of Will and Carlton, and they end up on the ledge of the apartment building. And while out there, they rethink some life choices, like not dating women with boyfriends. And the final love interest of Will Smith is cousin Nikki's boxing instructor, Helena, played by Galen Gord. When Will finds out that the boxing instructor is a woman, he makes slick comments about how women can't box. Helena, offended by this, challenges Will to a sparring session and knocks out Willie from West Philly. Now that she knows she can knock him out, Helena starts punking Will, starts talking about his mama, starts throwing playful jabs. Will eventually gets fed up with the pokes and the jabs and the teases. He swats her shots at him and apprehends her in an arm lock that at the same time unlocks deep levels of freak that she didn't know she had in her. Now turned on, she hops into Will's arms and he carries her off out of the gym for some post-workout hucklebuck. And that was the many loves and love interests of Will Smith. The Many Loves of Will. The show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is one of my favorite sitcoms. It had a catchy theme song, just about everyone knows it, word for word, memorable characters, solid casting to play the characters, great parents, Aunt Viv, Uncle Phil, and my first crush, Ashley Banks. And of course, it was the beginning of Will Smith's acting career. And now, he's one of the biggest names in Hollywood.